I knew the marriage was over the moment she slid that contract across the table, with a smirk, no less, a neatly printed proposal asking me to share her, not just her time, but her body, her attention, her intimacy, with strangers. She called it liberation. I called it betrayal wearing a silk robe. And the worst part? She wasn't asking. She was telling me, as if I should be grateful for the honor of being publicly humiliated. After 12 years of devotion, 2 daughters, and building her brand while burying my own voice, she turned my life into a sideshow, just so she could taste attention from other men without consequence. That night, I didn't yell, I didn't cry. I just stared at the woman I no longer recognized, the woman who used to look at me with respect, and now looked at me like a placeholder. And quietly, I knew I would let her win this moment, so I could win everything else. Before we dive into today's story, take a moment to share where you're watching from. We love seeing how our stories bring people together from every corner of the world. Your thoughts and comments are what make this community so special, and we're truly grateful to have you here. If you haven't already, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a new story filled with drama, resilience, and unexpected twists. Now, settle in, get comfortable, and maybe grab your favorite drink because this is a tale you won't want to miss. Let's get started. I knew the marriage was over the moment she slid that contract across the table, with a smirk no less, a neatly printed proposal asking me to share her, not just her time, but her body, her attention, her intimacy, with strangers. She called it liberation. I called it betrayal wearing a silk robe. And the worst part? She wasn't asking. She was telling me, as if I should be grateful for the honor of being publicly humiliated. After 12 years of devotion, 2 daughters, and building her brand while burying my own voice, she turned my life into a sideshow, just so she could taste attention from other men without consequence. That night, I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just stared at the woman I no longer recognized, the woman who used to look at me with respect, and now looked at me like a placeholder. And quietly, I knew I would let her win this moment, so I could win everything else. It had started with subtle changes, the longer hours at networking events, the camera always on during dinner, and that infuriating phrase she'd adopted, "I'm curating my space." Cressida had transformed. Gone was the woman who once stayed up late to edit my pitch decks when I was bootstrapping the AI firm that now paid for our penthouse and the girls' private school. In her place stood someone who measured affection in engagement metrics and filtered approval through Instagram comments. I should have known something was off when she began referring to our marriage as conventional. Her tone when she said it wasn't dismissive. It was pitiful, as if she were embarrassed by the idea that she'd once believed in loyalty. That night at the kitchen island, I'd just come back from Melody's ballet recital. Cressida hadn't shown. She claimed she had a migraine, but I saw the stories later: champagne flutes, rooftop bar lights, and her clinking glasses with a guy who looked like a backup dancer. Then came the moment that rewired my life. She didn't wait for me to sit. The contract was already there, printed on thick, cream-colored paper. "An updated agreement," she said, with that rehearsed voice she used for brand meetings. I picked it up, eyes scanning the terms. It was written like a business deal, sterile, legalistic, and devoid of anything human. It even had bullet points. She wanted an open marriage, but only on her end. She cited emotional fluidity, sexual expansion, and partner pluralism. It read like a TED Talk on selfishness disguised as sophistication. "You're serious?" I asked. She shrugged. "It's what people are doing now. We're too big for monogamy, Marcus. You're a grown man. You get it." I did get it. I got that she had already cheated. I got that this was a cleanup operation, a post hoc justification so she could rebrand her affair as empowerment. And I got that she thought I would roll over, because I always had. but this time was different. I looked at her, not as my wife, but as a hostile party. She wasn't pitching an idea. She was establishing dominance. This wasn't a conversation. It was a PR stunt she expected me to endorse quietly. "You already slept with him," I said. Her face didn't change. No denial, just a half smile, like she was proud of how composed she was. "You're being dramatic." "No," I said. "You're being strategic. You want to cheat and still call it marriage." She reached for her green juice, sipping it like this was just another planning session. "I want to evolve. We can evolve together or separately." "And the girls?" She blinked once. "They'll adjust. Children are resilient." That line, that one sentence, did more damage than anything else. Not because it was cold, but because it was careless. As if our daughters were props, background characters in her reinvention. I didn't rage. I didn't storm out. I said nothing. I stood up, walked out of the room, and went to Melody's room. She was asleep, thumb in mouth, ballet tights still bunched around her ankles. I pulled the blanket over her. Then I checked on Lena, who was sketching something by the window. She looked up and smiled. "Did Mommy say she's coming next time?" she asked. I shook my head gently. She had other plans. Lena nodded and returned to her drawing. I peeked over her shoulder. It was a family sketch, but the mother figure was standing off to the side, holding a phone while the father sat between the girls. I swallowed hard. Even at 8, she knew. I spent the rest of the night walking through each room like I was inventorying a house I was about to leave, not physically, but emotionally. Something had snapped, quietly and permanently. Cressida hadn't just crossed a line. She redrew the entire map and expected me to play along, but I wouldn't react how she wanted. No confrontation, no threats. She lived online, in drama and curated chaos. I would live in reality. And I would make sure when the collapse came, it wouldn't be loud, but it would be complete. The next morning, she acted as if nothing had happened. She kissed the girls, grabbed her designer tote, and said she'd be recording at the studio. I watched her walk out the door like she was leaving a set, not a home. I waited until she left. Then I called Inez. Inez, my legal consultant and longtime friend, answered immediately. "Is it time?" "It's time," I said. "I need everything airtight. Custody, assets, digital forensics. And I need silence until I say go." She didn't ask for details. She just said, "I'm already on it." Later that week, I received the first internal draft of what would eventually become my full legal strategy. Clean, powerful, and bloodless. I didn't care about revenge. I cared about custody, about shielding Lena and Melody from the implosion they didn't cause, about preserving what was left of a name I had spent a decade building, while she built a brand off my back. As I sat down in my home office that night, I opened a blank document and titled it Receipts. Not to use, not yet, but to remember, to keep my mind sharp and my spirit calm. I wasn't leaving her just yet. I was letting her walk farther out onto the limb, while I quietly took the saw. I didn't move out right away. That's what she expected. She thought I'd storm off or crumble, but the best response to chaos is stillness, and I made sure my stillness felt like strategy. The morning after she handed me that open marriage proposal, I made breakfast for the girls like I always did. Melody sat at the counter, swinging her legs, while Lena scribbled a list of books she wanted from the school library. Cressida drifted into the kitchen late, still in a silk wrap and eyes half-focused on her phone. She kissed the top of Melody's head without really looking, then made a beeline for her green juice. I watched the way the girls tracked her movement. They weren't confused. They were adjusting. "Ballet pickup is at 4, I reminded her. She blinked, annoyed. "You're not handling that today?" "No." I said flatly. It's your day. She made a soft tisk sound and turned back to her phone. She was texting someone. I didn't need to see the screen to know it wasn't about the kids. I let her play the part. Detached wife, modern mother, boss woman with a busy schedule. Meanwhile, I was building the scaffolding to reclaim everything quietly. Inez moved quickly. We met in person 2 days later at a private law office downtown. She laid out a plan with surgical precision. Asset mapping, custody viability strategy, digital capture protocols, timeline synchronization with Cresas' public posts. Her eyes narrowed as she scrolled through Cresas' curated life online. She's making this easier than it should be, Inez said. Chronically documenting herself partying while the kids are home with you? That's gold. I leaned back. She thinks her image is untouchable. Inez smirked. Then let's not attack it. Let's let her polish it, until it reflects the worst parts of her. We agreed to one thing early on. No drama. I wouldn't blow up. I wouldn't expose her. I'd let her narrative run free while mine quietly loaded in the background, time-stamped, confirmed, undeniable. The first twist came that weekend. Lena had a sleepover canceled last minute. Cressida had taken a red-eye to Miami for a wellness panel. So I picked the girls up from school and we ordered sushi. While Lena was showering, Melody, who was only 5, sat cross-legged on the rug, looking at my phone's lock screen, a picture of the 4 of us from last summer. She asked, "Why isn't Mommy in pictures anymore?" My throat tightened. "What do you mean?" I asked. She pointed. "You take more pictures now. She's never in them." I wanted to lie, to protect her, but even a 5-year-old had noticed the absence of presence. "She's been busy," I offered. It was weak, but it was all I had. Melody's voice dropped to a whisper. "Do you still love her?" The question was so direct, it felt surgical. I didn't answer. She didn't push. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat at my desk, scrolling through every photo, every calendar entry, every receipt, not because I needed proof she'd betrayed me. I had that. But because I needed to see the timeline from the outside. I needed to understand what the girls had already begun to feel. That she wasn't just leaving me. She was ghosting the family while living under the same roof. The next day, Inez called. "You're not going to like this," she said. "I got the metadata from her content editor's cloud storage. Your wife's lover, Orson, is someone we know." I frowned. "Who?" "Your former intern, from 5 years ago. The one you helped get into Stanford." Orson Godfrey. I remembered him. Ambitious, charming, a little too smooth for his age. I'd written his letter of recommendation myself. "He's 27, I said flatly. "And your wife is 37, Inez added. "It's not illegal, but it's wildly inappropriate and politically unmarketable for her empowerment image." I swallowed bile. Cressida hadn't just broken vows. She'd done it with someone I'd mentored. This wasn't an affair. It was a calculated dismantling. "Find everything," I said. "Messages, photos, dates. I want every pixel." At home, I said nothing. She was planning another trip, this time to Los Angeles for a sponsorship dinner. I helped pack her carry-on like nothing had changed. When she left, I sat the girls down. "I need to ask you something," I told them. They looked up, eyes wide, not scared, just waiting. "Do you feel like Mommy's here when she's home?" Lena answered first. "No," Melody echoed. "She's on her phone a lot." Lena added, "Sometimes she forgets I'm in the room." I nodded. I didn't prompt more. I didn't twist the narrative. I just listened. Their honesty would hold more weight in court than any photo ever could. That weekend, Inez sent over a confidential binder titled Phase 1, Behavioral Dossier. In it were Dozens of Instagram stories with location tags not matching her claimed schedule. Screenshots of messages between Cressida and Orson, some overtly romantic, some explicitly degrading toward me. Financial activity showing her secretly funneling consulting fees into a private account labeled side growth. But what twisted the knife wasn't the money or the lies. It was a message she sent to Orson during one of the girls' birthdays. He's still trying to do the whole present dad thing. So cute how serious he takes it. She had reduced my fatherhood to a punchline. That was my breaking point. Not her infidelity, not her PR manipulation, but the way she turned my daughters into background noise in her script. The final twist came unexpectedly. Lena's teacher emailed me. She'd written an essay for her What Family Means assignment. The essay opened with, "Family is where people show up. Not just online, but really there. My daddy always shows up." It continued with gentle, innocent prose. But then it hit. Sometimes, family means letting go of someone if they don't want to be with you anymore, even if they're still in the pictures. The teacher said Lena had cried after writing it. Not loud sobs, just quiet tears while she kept writing. The kind of cry you earn, not perform. I printed the essay and slipped it into the legal binder under emotional environment. This wasn't just about a broken marriage anymore. This was about neglected children learning how to process abandonment while their mother filmed brand reels. By the end of the month, everything was in place. Custody groundwork, built, asset division plan, locked, digital receipts, archived and time-stamped, psychological impact logs, lined with real examples. The trap wasn't a trap. It was a mirror. One I'd quietly held up while she kept posing for cameras. She had no idea I had everything. She thought silence meant surrender. And she had no clue it meant preparation. The first shift in the air was subtle, but unmistakable. Cressida started treating me like a ghost. Not the cold, combative kind of estrangement, but the casual indifference people reserve for strangers in elevators. She didn't argue anymore. She didn't ask anything. She simply existed beside me, like we were roommates waiting for a lease to end, and I let her, because silence was still power. The girls, however, had begun gravitating toward me with increasing intensity. Melody's nightly ritual changed. She started asking me to tuck her in instead of Cressida. Lena stopped asking if her mother was coming to events altogether. They weren't angry, just emotionally detaching, slowly and naturally. And Cressida, too lost in her curated chaos, didn't even notice. One night, after putting the girls to bed, I returned to the kitchen to find Cressida pouring herself a glass of wine, barefoot in her silk wrap. The image should have been intimate. It used to be. But now it felt performative, like she was filming herself even when the cameras weren't on. "You're being awfully composed lately," she said, not looking up. I shrugged. Should I be otherwise? "I propose something most men would jump at," I smiled. "Maybe I'm not most men." She took a sip. "You're being passive-aggressive." "No," I said. "I'm being deliberate." She raised an eyebrow. "Whatever that means." "It means I'm not fighting for something that's already gone." The next day, a package arrived. Unmarked. No return address. Inside, an envelope, USB drive, and a typed note that read, "You should see what she filmed when you weren't around." I stared at it for hours. Didn't open it. I didn't need video confirmation. My strategy wasn't about catching her. It was about documenting her unraveling. Still, I forwarded it to Inez with one line. Add to digital evidence repository. Do not open unless absolutely necessary. Later that week, the first strategic crack opened. Cressida launched a new video campaign titled The Modern Marriage Myth. It was a full-on monologue, filmed on a rooftop with moody lighting and stylized tears. She spoke about the pressure of performing monogamy, about rediscovering herself, about courageous detachment. But what struck me wasn't the content, it was what she left out. There was no mention of our daughters, not even a nod to motherhood. No acknowledgement of the man who had funded her startup years ago. No trace of the family she was walking away from. It was as if we had been edited out. Inez texted me midstream. She just handed us PR gold. Every time she posts, she distances herself from the kids. That's a custody argument waiting to win itself. I responded, let her keep posting. A week later, Lena brought home a drawing. It was part of her school's Where I Feel Safe project. Her sketch was simple. A couch, a blanket, me in the middle, Melody on one side, Lena on the other. A quiet scene. Cozy, intact. Cressida wasn't in the picture. Is this us? I asked gently. She nodded. Where's Mom? She shrugged. She's on her phone in the other room. That moment said more than a courtroom speech ever could. Then came the gala. It was one of those obnoxiously lavish industry events hosted by a VC firm downtown. Cressida was invited as a featured disruptor. I received a +1 by default. I debated not going, but then realized it was the perfect stage. Not to perform, but to observe. I arrived in a classic charcoal suit. She wore a metallic gown that shimmered with each camera flash. People swarmed her. I stayed in the corner, speaking with 2 execs from a robotics firm. Midway through the night, Cressida approached. She was holding a martini, eyes sharp. You came, she said. Of course, I replied. Why wouldn't I? You hate these events. I'm adapting. She scanned me. You seem different. I am. Before she could respond, someone called her name. She left. But she looked back once, longer than she should have. Inez was right. Silence unsettled her. Later that night, I overheard her telling someone Orson wasn't officially public yet. She wanted to protect his privacy. She wasn't protecting him. She was hedging her bets, keeping one foot in my world just in case hers collapsed. The following morning, the second twist landed. Melody had drawn on the walls with permanent marker. Cressida lost it. She screamed, not just a correction, but a full-on breakdown. Melody cried so hard she vomited. I came running from the home office and scooped her up while Cressida raged in the background. You coddle her too much, she shouted. She's 5, I said, keeping my voice low. She made a mistake. She ruined the wall. She's terrified of you. Cressida went silent. I'm not stunned, calculating. I turned to Melody. You're okay. We'll clean it. Walls don't matter. You do. That night, Lena wrote a note and left it under my pillow. I don't want Mommy to pick me up from school anymore. Can you? It was signed with a heart. The third twist followed fast. Inez called me that evening. Her team had reviewed the full financials of Cressida's influencer deals. She's been misreporting her independent income to the IRS, Inez said. We don't weaponize this, yet, but it gives us negotiation leverage. And custody? Better than expected. We've mapped out parenting logs. You have 83% hands-on presence in the last 6 months. That's documented through photos, school logins, emails, and GPS metadata. I nodded slowly. And Orson? I asked. He's now listed as a contractor for her startup, on paper. Meaning, if the affair happened during that period, it opens her up to harassment liability as his superior. I exhaled. She hadn't just cheated. She had done it stupidly. One afternoon, Lena was reading quietly on the couch when Cressida walked in. She said something about dinner plans. Lena didn't respond. Did you hear me? Cressida asked. Lena didn't even look up. Are you going to dinner with Orson? Cressida froze. Who told you that? No one, Lena said softly. But you smell like his cologne sometimes. I walked into the room just in time to see Cressida's expression twist. She looked at me, accusatory. You told her? I shook my head. You did, with every absence, with every ignored recital. She stormed out. The front door slammed so hard a painting fell off the wall. Lena didn't flinch. That night, after the girls were asleep, I stood by the window in my office, watching the city blur into light. This was no longer about betrayal. It was about parenting, about presence, about peace. I opened a file titled Custody Foundation. It was nearly 300 pages now. Photos, timestamps, recordings, school notes, therapy logs, digital calendars. I scrolled to the final tab, Witnesses, and then I added the name, Lena Reed, minor testimony, emotional observation, not direct coaching. She had seen what mattered, not because I told her, but because she lived it. The unraveling didn't come with a bang. It came quietly, in a steady, humiliating trickle, starting with the moment Cressida accidentally emailed her brand proposal to me instead of her PR team. The deck was supposed to pitch a campaign around authentic motherhood in modern relationships. A full-fledged media rollout, photo shoots, sponsored reels, raw interviews where she'd speak candidly about redefining partnership beyond fidelity. What stopped me cold wasn't just the hypocrisy. It was the photos attached, none of which included our daughters, none of which included me. Instead, front and center was Orson, posing with her in curated, candid shots, hand in hand, whispering, eyes locked in faux tenderness. She was planning to rebrand her affair as a lifestyle, and she hadn't even bothered to remove the placeholders referencing my full name in the draft copy. That was the final confirmation. I wasn't just being replaced. I was being erased. 2 days later, I confronted her, not in rage, but in absolute surgical control. She was sitting on the couch, editing one of her videos, legs curled under her in designer loungewear. I held up the printed deck. You sent this to the wrong Marcus, I said calmly. She didn't flinch. It's not personal. It's strategy. You're using our life to monetize betrayal. I'm repackaging my truth, she said. And you're choosing to stay behind. Behind what? Deception? She smirked. You always needed me to be something small and predictable. I outgrew that. No, I said. You outgrew accountability. She tossed the document aside. It's happening. I have the sponsor deals. The interviews are locked in. And frankly, you're not part of the narrative anymore. I nodded. Then let me exit it publicly and completely. Her eyes narrowed. What does that mean? It means you'll get what you want. Freedom, attention, the curated life. But the girls stay with me. And we do this the right way. No courtroom drama, no scandal, no exposure. Unless you force my hand. She laughed. You think I'll give up custody because you're having a quiet meltdown? I smiled, just enough. I think you'll fold once you realize I've been documenting everything. Later that night, I sent Inez the campaign deck. She replied in under a minute. She's using likenesses without disclosure. She's implying an open relationship existed before formal consent, and she's capitalizing on a private domestic life to promote paid content. That's at least 3 breaches of California Civil Code if contested. I responded, prepare a preliminary cease and desist, quietly, no delivery unless provoked. By now, we'd amassed everything. Cressida's inconsistent digital timestamps, dozens of nights she was publicly unaccounted for while claiming parental care. Her neglect toward Melody's recent school issues, noted by the principal evidence she'd traveled out of state with Orson while listing the trip as business. The story wasn't just about betrayal anymore. It was becoming a case of willful, emotional, and physical abandonment. The next morning, Lena refused to come down for breakfast. When I went upstairs, I found her sitting on the floor of her room, clutching one of Cresa's perfume bottles. "She wore this when she used to tuck us in," she whispered. I knelt beside her. "She still loves you." "She doesn't look at us anymore," she said. "Not really." That hit deeper than anything a lawyer could write. Melody wandered in next, rubbing her eyes. "Is Mommy gone again?" "No," I said. "She's downstairs." Melody hesitated. "Can we eat up here instead?" That afternoon, I recorded a video, not for exposure, not for social media, but for the custody file. Me, sitting with the girls on the floor, reading their favorite storybook. Melody nestled under one arm, Lena leaning against my leg. They weren't performing. They were simply comfortable. Present. The first blow to Cresas' facade came publicly, and unexpectedly. A boutique parenting podcast she'd been scheduled to appear on, Rooted Modernity, posted a sudden announcement the day before her taping. "We believe parenting isn't a brand. After reviewing recent material, we've decided not to move forward with the planned episode." No names were mentioned, but the implication was obvious. Cressida was livid. She stormed into the apartment, still wearing a silk trench from a photo shoot. "Did you do this?" she snapped. I didn't even look up. Do what? The podcast drop. That was my narrative space. "I don't control other people's ethics," I said. "Maybe they just don't want to platform someone whose parenting record exists more on TikTok than in real time." She crossed her arms. "You're sabotaging me." "No," I said calmly. "I'm simply not protecting your illusion anymore." 3 days later came the next twist. Inez discovered that Orson had submitted an amended tax form for self-employment, listing Cressida Reed Consulting LLC as his principal contract employer during the same quarters she claimed he was just a friend. That detail wasn't just juicy, it was legally significant. It created a direct power imbalance that, if challenged, would redefine their relationship in court. Inez laid it out plainly. If she claims it wasn't a workplace romance, we have proof. If she claims it was, she opens herself up to professional misconduct. Either way, we win. Meanwhile, at home, the girls were evolving in the quietest, most tragic way. Lena stopped asking to show her mother new drawings. Melody began having nightmares again. One evening, I found her crying in her sleep. She clung to me when I tried to wake her. "She left," she sobbed. "She left and didn't hug me." "She's still here," I said, even though it felt like a lie. The next morning, I emailed the child psychologist Inez had recommended. We scheduled weekly play-based sessions, not to diagnose anything, just to document. Quietly, thoroughly. Cressida must have felt the shift, because soon after, she made a move I hadn't anticipated. She cooked dinner. A full spread, roasted vegetables, wine, even dessert. The girls were confused but excited. Melody climbed onto her lap. Lena hovered, hesitant. Cressida played the part well, asked about school, made jokes, even cleaned up afterward. But when the girls went to bed, she turned to me with that same performance smile. "See? I can do both." "No," I said. "You can visit. That's what tonight was." Her smile faded. "You're making me into a villain." "I'm not making you into anything," I said. "I'm simply not covering for you anymore." Her jaw clenched. "You're not taking them. They're already drifting." That line, simple and true, rattled her more than anything else, because deep down, she knew it was happening, not because I was pulling them away, but because they were letting go. That night, Cressida texted Orson. I only knew because she accidentally left her iPad unlocked in the kitchen. "He's not reacting. He's building something. I can feel it." "Maybe he's bluffing?" Orson replied. "He's never bluffed in his life. I took a walk after that, 15 blocks around the neighborhood. No music, just silence and wind. I wasn't angry. I wasn't heartbroken. I was ready, not for revenge, but for closure. The kind that didn't require noise. Just facts. Just proof. Just love. Undeniable, consistent, and quiet, in the form of two little girls who already knew who showed up and who didn't. The cease and desist was never meant to be sent. It was leverage, a chess piece. But when Cressida posted a teaser trailer for her upcoming Truth docuseries, featuring heavily blurred images of our daughters, that line was crossed. My daughters were not branding tools. They were not abstract symbols of co-parenting consciousness. They were children, mine, and they were scared. I sent a 2-line message to Inez. Issue it. Use language with teeth. Confirmed. Sending within the hour. That hour turned into 10 minutes. The fallout came fast. Cressida didn't respond directly. She posted a vague Instagram story instead, a black screen with white text. Some people fear the light because it shows what they've hidden. Typical. But the email she sent to her team was leaked to Inez the next morning, courtesy of an assistant fed up with the drama. It read, "Pause all uploads. Legal complications. We'll pivot to lifestyle focus for now. Lock down all archived footage and remove all content featuring minors immediately." Inez forwarded it to me with one line. She just blinked. But that wasn't the climax. That was just the precursor. The real breaking point came 3 days later, at the mediation table. We met in a luxury midtown office tower. Frosted glass, deep walnut floors, bottled still water in front of every chair. Cressida arrived first, dressed more for a press conference than a legal proceeding. Neutral tones, high collar, low bun. Her lawyer, a tall, polished woman in an ivory pantsuit, sat quietly beside her. Inez arrived with me. She carried a black leather folio and wore no makeup, no expression, just focus. I greeted no one. The mediator, a man in his 50s with kind eyes and a sharp mind, opened the session calmly. "Let's begin with custody parameters." Cressida's attorney spoke first. "My client seeks equal physical and legal custody. She proposes a flexible schedule to accommodate both professional obligations and the children's best interest." Inez didn't even look up. "We're submitting for full physical custody with joint legal. My client has maintained 83% physical presence over the past 9 months. We have documented medical appointments, school pickups, therapy logs, and daily routines. The children have requested verbally and in writing to remain primarily in his care." The mediator looked at Cressida. "I see," he said gently. "Ms. Reed, how do you respond to your children's stated preferences?" Cressida folded her arms. "They're being manipulated." I spoke for the first time. "They're being raised." That silence hung heavy. Then Inez slid a document across the table. "Additionally," she said, "we're submitting evidence that the romantic relationship between Ms. Reed and Mr. Orson Darnell involved an employer-contractor dynamic during its formative phase. This raises ethical and potentially legal concerns, particularly since Ms. Reed was representing a family-oriented public image during that time." Cressida's lawyer went pale. "That's irrelevant to custody." "It speaks to character and judgment," Inez said, cool as ever. "Especially since Ms. Reed continues to pursue a monetized lifestyle campaign involving her family while distancing herself from the physical labor of parenting." Cressida's jaw clenched. "So now I'm on trial for being ambitious?" I looked her dead in the eyes. "No, you're on trial for disappearing and calling it empowerment." The mediator requested a recess. I stepped out into the hallway, feeling the kind of calm that comes when you've prepared for every possible attack. Inez joined me, sipping coffee. "She's spiraling," she said. "You've got her pressed against 2 walls, family credibility and business integrity." I nodded. "Let's keep the pressure right there." The second session resumed with financials. Cresa's lawyer requested a 50-50 asset split, claiming that her influencer brand had grown independently in recent years. Inez countered with a forensic audit. We're prepared to show that the initial capital, branding support, and content infrastructure were all established using joint marital assets, including Mr. Reed's prior intellectual property from his consulting business. The mediator asked for clarification. Inez opened a document, invoices, emails, and copyright records, tracing every dollar and every line of back-end code. Cressida finally snapped. "You were logging all this?" she barked. "I was watching," I said. "You don't deserve a dime of my growth. And you don't get to rewrite history because the camera's rolling." Then came the final blow. Inez pulled out a flash drive. This contains a curated sequence of timestamps from Ms. Reed's travel logs, business statements, and digital footprint, mapped against her claimed parenting time over the last 12 months. The mediator looked up. "And?" he asked. Inez nodded. "It proves she misrepresented her presence. In some instances, she was across the country while logging custody time on legal forms. That's perjury." Cressida's lawyer asked for a sidebar. They left the room. Inez turned to me. "We've got her boxed in. If she doesn't agree to the terms now, we file officially and let Discovery destroy her public image." 15 minutes later, they returned. Cressida was silent. Her lawyer cleared her throat. "My client is prepared to agree to primary custody for Mr. Reed with scheduled visitation rights. She also consents to a financial settlement preserving a portion of her business assets while relinquishing any claim to Mr. Reed's consultancy holdings. No apology, no eye contact, just retreat." The mediator looked at me. "Are these terms acceptable?" I looked at Cressida, then at the empty space she used to occupy in our lives. "Yes," I said, "they are." It should have felt like victory, and in some ways, it did. But I didn't walk out of that room triumphant. I walked out exhausted, not from losing her, from surviving her, the version of her that turned love into leverage, that turned intimacy into Instagram, that turned parenthood into a portfolio. But I'd protected my daughters, and in the end, that was the only win I ever needed. The days following the mediation were a strange mix of relief and lingering tension. The legal battle had settled, but the emotional war was far from over. Cressida's social media presence grew more pronounced, and yet it felt hollow, a spotlight focused on everything but the truth. Her latest post was a short video, just over 30 seconds. She walked slowly along the edge of a glass balcony high above the city skyline, her hair catching the breeze, eyes looking far away. The caption was simple and sharp. "Sometimes freedom costs you everything, but you pay it anyway." The comments section exploded with praise. Followers called her powerful, liberated, brave. They admired her for breaking free from the confines of a traditional marriage and carving her own path. But I saw behind the words and the carefully curated visuals, that wasn't strength. It was spin. It was the final attempt to reframe a narrative she had lost control of, a desperate bid to claim victory in a battle she had already lost. At home, the girls were settling into our new routine. Lena blossomed in her after-school art program, her creativity pouring into vivid paintings, scenes of our kitchen during lazy pancake Sundays, the loyal dog curled up by the door, and her classroom corner filled with crayons and books. Each brushstroke was a balm, a small reclaiming of normalcy. Melody's nightmares, once frequent and frightening, slowly diminished. One night, as she drifted off to sleep, she clutched my hand tightly and murmured, "I like this house better now. It feels like it listens." I wasn't sure what she meant, but I understood. The constant tension, the fake smiles, the unseen arguments, all that noise had quieted. For the first time in a long while, we could breathe without holding our breath. Then came the first real surprise. Orson was out. The startup board had quietly voted to terminate him. Officially, it was due to conflicts of interest and concerns about brand image. Unofficially, it was because his presence threatened to deepen the scandal surrounding Cressida. A few days later, a small tech blog published an obscure article titled, "Startup Romance Sparks Quiet Fallout Behind Closed Doors." The story didn't go viral, but it sent a ripple through the circles that mattered. According to Inez, the fallout cost Cressida several brand partnerships on the verge of signing. The foundation she had built so carefully wasn't collapsing overnight, but it was crumbling, one brick at a time. I hadn't spoken with my father in over a year, mostly to avoid the frustration that came with his disapproval of our situation. But then he called. "Mind if I visit the girls?" he asked quietly. "Just for the weekend." I said yes without hesitation. When he arrived, he came bearing gifts, 2 boxes of puzzles, groceries, and handmade comic cards for Lena and Melody. That night, as we ate grilled cheese sandwiches, he looked across the table with a sadness that caught me off guard. "I saw her latest post," he said softly. I didn't answer. "She looks empty." I studied my daughters laughing, oblivious to the shadows in the room. "She is," I finally said. "But she built it that way." Cressida's visitation was sparse. She picked afternoons, never weekends, never extended time. The girls came home increasingly distant, not from me, but from her. Lena stopped sharing details. Melody's responses grew short and detached. Sometimes they didn't talk about her at all. One evening, Lena whispered, "Mommy's always on her phone, even when I show her my drawings." That hurt more than I expected. Not because of her phone, but because she didn't notice what she was losing, the trust and attention of her own children. The next twist was a surprise. A producer reached out regarding Cressida's plans to sell a docuseries on a niche streaming platform. The pitch was intimate, a raw look inside a modern marriage. They asked for my side to balance the narrative. I declined. "No comment," I said, not from bitterness, but from clarity. This story wasn't hers to tell anymore. Within days, the project fell through, quietly, without scandal or fanfare. The door closed, and with it, the possibility of rewriting history in public. One rainy morning, while packing the girls' lunches, Melody asked a question I'd been preparing for but never wanted to hear. "Why doesn't Mommy live with us anymore?" I put down the knife, took a deep breath, and knelt to her level. "Sometimes," I said gently, "people love in ways that aren't enough. Sometimes they forget what matters most. But it's never your fault, and it doesn't change how much you are loved." She looked at me thoughtfully. "Do you still love her?" she asked. I paused before answering honestly. "Not anymore." But I did. And that part was real. She nodded and went back to slicing her apple. No tears, just peace. Because sometimes the simplest truths bring the deepest comfort. That evening, Cressida called. She rarely called anymore, mostly texts with logistical updates. But this time, her voice was fragile, brittle even. "They're pulling back," she said, voice wavering. "They're adapting," I said quietly. "I want to reconnect." "Then show up," I replied. "Don't perform. Just be present." There was a long silence. "I don't know how," she whispered. I said nothing. Because there was nothing left to say. By May, Lena won second place in an art competition. She asked me to frame the painting, a vibrant, heartfelt scene of our living room with just me, Lena, and Melody. No background, no extras, no mother. The absence was profound and permanent. Late one night, I opened an old external drive filled with photos from happier days, vacations, birthdays, messy mornings filled with laughter and pancake batter. One photo caught my eye. Cressida holding Lena, both laughing freely, no makeup, no cameras, just genuine joy. I stared at it long enough to feel the ache of what once was. Then I closed the folder gently, because holding on to ghosts only weighs you down. In the weeks that followed, I made sure the girls had everything they needed: stability, love, and most importantly, presence. We didn't pretend the past didn't hurt, but we learned how to move forward without it controlling us. Cressida remained a shadow on the sidelines, a presence more felt than seen, more whispered than spoken. Yet even in absence, her impact lingered. The trust broken, the moments missed, the love lost. But for the first time, I knew that the story I was writing for my daughters wasn't about pain or betrayal. It was about resilience, about showing up when it matters most, about building a future where love is defined by action, not promises. And that was a victory worth everything. The final chapter of this journey was less about fireworks and more about quiet, steady healing, the kind that doesn't announce itself with grand gestures or dramatic declarations, but settles into the everyday rhythms of life, consistent, unwavering, and profoundly grounding. With the legal battles behind us, the custody arrangements settled, and the tumultuous past slowly fading, the focus shifted entirely to the future: my daughters, my career, and the new life we would build together. The mornings became my sacred time. Waking early before the city stirred, I would prepare breakfast, packing lunches with care, checking homework assignments, and making sure each day started with stability and love. Lena and Melody adapted with surprising resilience, their laughter filling the rooms as they grew more confident and secure. One particular morning stands out, a snapshot etched into memory. I was helping Melody tie her shoelaces by the front door, the sun casting soft gold through the windows, when she looked up and said, "Dad, thank you for staying, for not giving up on us." Her words hit me with a force I didn't expect. I knelt down, hugged her close, and promised, "I'll always be here, no matter what." Professionally, I poured myself into rebuilding my consultancy, turning pain into purpose. The lessons from my fractured marriage fueled a deeper empathy with clients facing their own struggles, whether in relationships or business. Success followed not just because of expertise, but because of genuine connection forged through hardship. Opportunities came knocking: partnerships, speaking engagements, and new projects that aligned with my values. I found strength in being authentic, unafraid to share parts of my story when appropriate. This openness became a bridge, inspiring others and providing a sense of catharsis for myself. Meanwhile, Diane, who had become a close friend during this time, moved in with us, bringing warmth and laughter back into the home. Her daughter Matilda quickly bonded with Lena and Melody, forming a blended family grounded in respect and affection. The dynamics weren't always perfect. There were moments of tension and adjustment, of course, but the foundation was strong, a mutual commitment to nurturing and supporting the children as they navigated their new normal. Family dinners became sacred rituals, a space for stories, shared dreams, and healing. Watching the girls interact freely with Matilda was a reminder that love can take many forms, and that family is defined not just by blood, but by presence and care. The camper remained a symbol of freedom and adventure. Weekend trips to national parks, beachside campgrounds, and mountain trails became cherished traditions. These excursions were more than just getaways. They were opportunities to create new memories, to witness my daughter's joy uninhibited by the past. One summer, we spent 9 days near the Florida coast, combining hiking, beach time, and a visit to a nearby amusement park. The girls' laughter echoed through the trees as they ran, biked, and explored, their spirits unburdened by the shadows that once loomed. It was in these moments, away from courtrooms and conflict, that I truly felt victory, not just as a father or a man who had endured, but as someone who had reclaimed joy. Cressida's presence faded steadily. She visited the girls once a month, her involvement limited and often distracted. The children's affection for her remained intact in their memories, but their daily lives were anchored in the love and stability I provided. There was no bitterness in how I spoke of her, only acceptance. People make choices, and consequences follow. I chose to focus on what I could control, being the father my daughters deserved. The final twist came unexpectedly. One afternoon, I received a call from the school counselor. Lena had been nominated for a Community Leadership Award, recognized for her empathy and resilience. "It's remarkable," the counselor said. "She's a shining example of strength for her peers." I felt a surge of pride that words couldn't capture. It wasn't just about academic achievement, but about the person Lena was becoming. Compassionate, grounded, and courageous. As the years unfolded, Melody and Lena thrived. College acceptance letters arrived, and future plans took shape. Their lives were a tapestry of accomplishments, friendships, and new adventures, woven from the threads of love, perseverance, and healing. Looking back, the pain and betrayal that once defined our family were chapters, not the whole story. In quiet moments, I reflect on how far we've come. The wounds still surface sometimes, reminders that healing is ongoing, but they no longer dictate the narrative. Instead, hope, resilience, and unwavering love have rewritten our story. Standing by the window one evening, watching the city lights twinkle against the night sky, I felt a profound sense of peace. This was more than survival. It was triumph, not of revenge or bitterness, but of grace, of choosing to rise, to nurture, and to love fiercely despite everything. And that, ultimately, is what defines victory. Sometimes, the greatest strength lies not in fighting louder, but in walking away quieter, with your dignity intact. Healing doesn't always come with applause. It often begins in silence, in the stillness after the storm, when you're left alone with the truth. And in that quiet, you learn something profound. Peace is not given. It is chosen, protected, and earned, day by day. Not every wound leaves a scar visible to others. Some stay beneath the surface, shaping who we become, sharpening our boundaries, softening our hearts. But with time, presence, and honesty, even the deepest betrayals can become the foundation for something unshakable. This wasn't just a story about betrayal or loss. It was about reclaiming what matters: authenticity, responsibility, and the quiet power of showing up when it counts. It's a reminder that not all battles need to be public to be won. Sometimes winning is simply choosing not to be broken. Thank you for walking this journey with us. If this story moved you, share your thoughts in the comments. We read every one. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss the next chapter. Until next time, take care of your heart and stay true to yourself.